Okay. Hi, it's nice to see you here at Parent Teacher Conferences. And we are so happy to have Rosalina in our class. She's a great student. She's very hard worker. She doesn't give up. When she doesn't know something, she really tries to figure it out, which is a wonderful trait. And she's also really respectful, and I appreciate that a lot. I want to talk about some some assessments that I've done over the past couple weeks with her so that we could talk about them with you. And there are a few different assessments that I've done, and some of them, one was a spelling, one was about phonics, a couple about reading, and a couple about writing. And these were all administered by myself. Some of them I took her work samples and looked at them by myself, and some involved interaction, and sometimes I just observed her. And all of these inventories and assessments are helping me to know where Rosalina's at right now and what strategies she uses, what things she totally has mastered, what things she still needs help with, and in really what way I can best help her is the reason that all of these assessments have been done. So first I want to talk about a few of her strengths from the assessments that I've taken and why they're strengths. So from her writing, I have a writing sample analysis guide that looks like this. And basically I took her journal and looked at a piece of opinion writing, informative writing, and narrative writing on 2 different weeks because they write one of each genre each week. So I took it from 2 different weeks and just looked at it and took notes on it about if she was including what she needed to according to the standards and any other notes. And something I noticed is that she really clearly communicates her ideas through her writing. Even though her spelling is unconventional, she spells it phonetically and it can be decoded, and I can understand exactly what she's trying to say. All of her writing introduced the topic and the genre in her first sentence, which is something that we've been working on. So one of her informational ones was about turkeys, and the sentence to start it says, "Do you want to learn about turkeys with me?" So that tells us it's going to be facts and it's about turkeys. Her details in her writing correspond to the genre she's writing about. So she uses reasons to support her opinion, facts for informational, and a plot for a story or narrative. And this ability of hers to communicate her ideas is super important. And then I'm going to talk about an idea I have for you to do at home to help her continue to make this a strategy, and something I'm going to do at school. So something that you could do at home with her to continue working on her writing and ensure that it is still a strength is to let her pick out some sort of notebook or journal that she can write in, whatever she wants to write about. She can write about her day, she can write her own stories or ideas or letters and in this book or journal, and that will help her see why writing is important at home and that it can be creative and she can write however she wants to, and just let her practice writing her words, spelling, writing whole sentences and whole ideas. And then you as parents could read it or have her read them out loud to you, which would help her catch mistakes because she doesn't usually reread her writing. You could also write a note in her journal so that she can see your writing and feel encouraged. And then in school, I'm going to keep working on, like I said, going back and checking. So I'm going to implement is a short checklist rubric, which once all of the students have finished their writing, they will all have this checklist rubric and do it themselves first, and then they'll switch with a partner and correct their partner's work. So this checklist is going to be looking for capitalization, punctuation, sentences that have whole ideas, letters that are drawn the right way. Some students are still struggling with that, and if the whole story or writing tells their ideas, if it says what they want it to. So once they do that themselves and go back and check, they'll switch with a partner, which I think will help them take it a little bit more seriously. And she loves helping in the classroom, so I think she would really enjoy getting to have somebody else's work and correct it for them. Another thing I want to talk about is her spelling. I loved doing the spelling with her, and the way it worked is I told her a bunch of words and she wrote them. And this is her paper with her writing on it. And the things that we've already talked about in class, she has mastered, which is great. And she also, the strength that I really saw is that she uses the things she's already learned in spelling, her patterns and her phonics knowledge, to figure out words she doesn't know. So, for example, wait, she spelled W-A-T-E, because she's already learned that if we put an E at the end, it makes the vowel in the middle a long vowel sound. She did this a few times, and she also drew on her phonics knowledge. And I think that's a really important skill that she has, is taking what she already knows and applying it. So something that you guys could work on with her still is a game, actually, that's a making words activity. And you can just let her pick a word that's between like 5 and 8 letters long, and then write it down and cut it so each letter is on its own square. And then she can take 1 letter or 2 letters and then make a word and add letters and see how many words she can make out of those letters and get back to the original word at the end. And so that will just help her practice her spelling and also review spelling patterns she's already learned about, and it will probably help her notice new things as you guys help her learn and show her how words are spelled in that game in a fun way. And then in school, I just want to give her another strategy to use besides just sounding out words to spell them. So what I'm going to start doing is putting up word walls, so charts that are based on themes we're studying. So usually our writing is about a theme for a week, so turkeys or bats or things like that. So we'll come up with words that we'll put on this wall, and it will be a resource for the kids to use while they're writing. And so I'll encourage Rosalina to look at how she spells it on her own first, then try and write it, but if she doesn't know it, to look at the wall and then spell exactly as it is written up there. And that will help her to practice writing it correctly and just introduce the idea of a dictionary as a resource to her. And then the other strength I wanted to talk about was actually in reading. And so I did some assessments called running records, which I just listened to her read and mark how she reads, if she makes mistakes, what mistakes are they, so I can keep track of them. And I noticed that she doesn't just guess words. Some kids will see a word they don't know and just say something and it doesn't make sense, or it doesn't even look like the word on the paper, but she really looks at the word, looks at what it looks like, and tries to figure it out. And that's a really important skill that she has too, because she is really trying to know what every word says. And a lot of the time, most of the time, she's just looking at how the word looks. So she's trying to decode it. Once in a while, it's also with meaning and if it makes sense, but most of the time it's visual. And I think as she continues to work on this understanding and decoding, and since she's so careful, she'll be able to become a great reader. At home, one thing I think would be helpful to continue to help her with her reading would be just to read aloud to her. That's just really important. And you could even model, like if there's a word that you think maybe she doesn't know, you could just say, how would I figure that word out? And have her try it and then see if she can get it. And if not, you can help her or just tell her the word and help her notice why it's that word. Help her notice it makes sense. The letters are in this order. Things like that. And I can give you some videos to look at if you want to do that with her that will kind of guide you in how to do it if you don't feel totally comfortable with it. And then here in the classroom at school, I am going to start doing more think alouds when I read to the class. So in our reading lessons, like shared reading or even guided reading, we'll be reading out loud and say, oh, this is how I read. Like, okay, come to an unknown word. I'm thinking it starts with this letter, so it makes this sound, and it can't be this word because that doesn't make sense. Just saying out loud how I read and how I figure out words, because this will help Rosalina notice that to be a good reader, you have to notice what you're reading. You have to monitor your own reading and comprehension. And I'm really going to focus with her on stopping when she doesn't know a word and really trying to figure it out and then check if it makes sense. And this will really help her make sure that she's comprehending and not just visually trying to figure out each word. And then I want to talk about two things I think we could work harder on with her that are sort of hard. One actually has to do with what we just talked about with the running records and how she looks mostly at the visual cues or how the word looks to figure out what it says. And so what happens sometimes with that is that she'll see it, think it's another word, say it, and then keep going, but it really doesn't make sense and it gets her confused. So I think it's important for her to develop the skill of stopping and saying, did that make sense, what I just read? So what you could do at home with her for that is to have her read out loud to you. She has to read at home every night. Just have her read for a few minutes out loud to you. And when you notice she's having a hard time, or if she reads a word wrong, just ask her to go back and double check and ask her if it made sense. If she rereads the sentence with the word she said, did it make sense? Because this is something second graders should be able to do, and it will help her start to comprehend better, which is the whole reason that we read anyways. And then in school, I'm going to introduce the strategy as well, so it will kind of go with what you're doing at home of determining if words make sense. So I'm going to do this in guided reading, so when we're in our small groups that are levels. So with her group, I will teach a lesson about it, super specific, and then have them practice and monitor how it's going and continue working on it until it's become pretty automatic and natural. Then the last thing I wanted to talk about is another thing with her reading. We did an inventory, which is where I ask her questions about how she feels about reading, what she thinks good readers are, how she sees herself as a reader. And it's interesting because she said she likes reading at school, but she doesn't really like reading at home. And so that kind of told me that she doesn't have a super deep love of reading, which I feel like as a teacher is my job to help her become a person that loves reading so that she will love reading for the rest of her life. And so at home, I think just make sure that she's getting her reading done in a positive way. Like, don't force her to, but encourage her and make it a positive thing for her to do. You can ask her about what she's reading. I can help you it needs to be at the right level for her to read, so I can help you if you need help deciding if the books she's reading are at the right level. And I also think the most powerful thing for her would be to see that you love reading. So if you pull out a book and read while she's reading, I think that would send the message to her that reading is important and it's a good way to spend your time. And then for me at school, I am going to do literature circles, which is where children pick from some books and in groups discuss them. And so it involves a lot of choice and a lot of responsibility because the kids have different roles in their groups. And I really think Rosalina would enjoy that a lot because she loves talking to the other students, helping them, and having responsibilities. And I think as she has that choice, as she discusses in this student-led discussion and sees how reading kind of is exciting, I think she'll be able to be more engaged. So I hope this helped you. I really love having Rosalina in our class, and I think she's going to become a wonderful student, a wonderful person who is a great reader and writer as we work together to achieve these goals.